American cars in the 1960s gave us some true classics, but also some of the worst mistakes ever made. These are the 20 worst cars that prove not every muscle car was a winner. Number 20, 1965 Dodge Coronet 440 V8. The 1965 Dodge Coronet 440 is a car many people thought would be awesome, but sadly, it turned out to be one of the worst cars from the muscle car time. It looked strong, but it just was not very good. Let's talk about the engine. It had a 383 cubic inch V8 engine. That sounds big, right? But it did not feel fast at all. Other cars from that time were way more powerful and fun. The engine felt old and slow. Even though it had a better carburetor, it still needed a lot of fixing and never ran smoothly. The way it handled the road was not good either. The ride felt super rough, like bumping over every little crack. The heavy body made it hard to drive fast. Turning corners felt scary because the steering was not very good. Inside, the car looked clean with white vinyl seats, but sitting in it was not comfy. The seats were stiff and did not support your back well. The dashboard had too many things on it, and the gauges were not easy to read. Safety was also a big problem. There were no seat belts in the back. That is dangerous. The dashboard was hard and could hurt you in a crash. And the worst part? The car did not even look cool. It was boxy and boring. Other muscle cars had strong lines and awesome styles. This one just looked plain. So even though it tried to be a muscle car, the 1965 Dodge Coronet 440 was slow, bumpy, unsafe, and not fun to look at. Number 19, 1967 Chevrolet Camaro RS 327. Looking cool is not the same as driving great, and the 1967 Chevrolet Camaro RS 327 proves it. At first glance, it had bright Bolero red paint, a white vinyl top, and a nose stripe that screamed muscle car. But once you got behind the wheel, things started to feel weak. Let's talk about the engine. It had a 327 cubic inch V8, which sounds powerful, right? But nope, it just did not have the big punch that other muscle cars had. It could move okay on regular roads, but it was not fast enough to leave other cars in the dust. For a car that looked fast, it felt a bit sleepy when you hit the gas. The inside had fancy white bucket seats and a tilted steering wheel, but the cabin was tiny. Tall people felt squished. Long trips felt longer, and even though the radio system was modern, the small space made it hard to enjoy the ride. Additionally, the Camaro had a Saginaw 4-speed manual transmission and a 10-bolt rear axle. That sounds fancy, but the steering was soft and the brakes were slow. Power drum brakes do not stop fast, and that is not good when you need to slam the brakes quickly. It made drivers feel unsure, and that is bad news for a muscle car. It rolled on 14-inch wheels that looked fine, but were smaller than what other faster cars used. The exhaust sounded strong thanks to Flowmaster mufflers, but the car did not move like it sounded. Yes, it had extras like a power top and air conditioning, but cool buttons do not fix the weak speed. This Camaro looked tough but felt too soft. Number 18, 1961 Pontiac Tempest. Being strange does not always mean being good, and the 1961 Pontiac Tempest is proof of that. This car tried to be clever, but it ended up being one of the worst cars for people who just wanted something simple and strong. Instead of using normal parts, Pontiac gave the Tempest a weird bendy driveshaft called a rope drive. It twisted its way from the engine in the front to the transmission in the back. That sounds cool, but it broke a lot and was super hard to fix. Mechanics hated working on it, and drivers hated paying for repairs. It also made the car feel wobbly when driving, especially on bumpy roads. Pontiac didn't want to just copy the Corvair from Chevrolet. They wanted to make their own cool car, but instead of cool, they made it confusing. The engine was half of a V8 cut in half, literally. That made it shake and vibrate, and it did not feel very strong. Even though the car had a flat floor inside, which gave people more room, nobody liked how strange the car felt on the road. On the outside, the Tempest looked pretty normal. But once people drove it, they knew something was off. The steering felt weird, the ride was bouncy, and the car just didn't feel safe. It had trouble going fast, turning smoothly, or stopping quickly. Even though a famous engineer named John Z. DeLorean helped design it, that didn't save the car from its weirdness. The Tempest might have been different from other small cars, but different does not always mean better. Drivers wanted something easier to live with. not something they had to fight every day. The Tempest was a car with too many ideas and not enough good ones. Number 17, 1967, Dodge Coronet 500. The 1967 Dodge Coronet 500 has a lot of car worseness. First, its shape is super boxy. It does not look cool or fancy at all. Today's cars have smooth, shiny lines. This one just looks big and old. And speaking of big, it is huge, but not in a good way. It is hard to park and even harder to turn. Trying to drive it on busy streets feels like moving a giant couch with wheels. It is not fun, just stressful. The inside of the car is not much better. It does not have power windows or comfy seats you can adjust. There are no airbags either. The dashboard looks boring, with only old-style gauges that barely tell you anything. There is no fancy screen or fun buttons to push. It feels like riding in a very old, plain box. The engine may sound strong, but it drinks fuel like a thirsty elephant. You will have to stop for gas all the time. Driving long distances costs a lot of money because it is not fuel efficient at all. The ride is not smooth. The suspension is so stiff that every bump feels like jumping on a hard bed. The brakes are also slow and weak. When you press them, the car takes too long to stop. That can be scary when going fast. And then there's the problem of keeping it working. Old parts break often. Fixing it costs a lot, and getting new parts is super hard. Some parts are not even made anymore. That's just a whole lot of car worseness. Number 16, 1969, Buick Skyllock Sport Coupe. The 1969 Buick Skyllock Sport Coupe is one of those cars that try to look tough, but fall apart when it really counts. To begin with, the regular Skyllock Sport Coupe did not get the cool features that the GS version had. The GS had hood scoops, shiny badges, and a powerful dual snorkel air cleaner. But the basic Skyllock looked plain. Buick even took off some of the shiny strips from the front fenders. Only the chrome wheels and a little trim tried to add style. But it still looked boring next to other muscle cars. Inside, things did not get much better. Buick removed the front vent windows, which made the inside stuffy. The California GS model still had those vents, but that was just a renamed, cheaper version. While it could reach 60 miles per hour in 9.5 seconds, that was not fast enough to impress real muscle car fans. The engine upgrades and faster transmissions were mostly saved for the fancier GS version. The Stage 1 package added more power with a better cam, dual exhausts, and a special axle. But again, the regular Skylark did not get any of that fun stuff. What really made the Skylark bad was how it held up over time. The body rusted quickly, and the way Buick built the car was not very good. Parts did not fit right, and the car started to fall apart faster than it should. Even though Buick sold a lot of cars that year, many people were disappointed. The 1969 Skylark looked strong, but it just could not back it up. Number 15, 1967 Oldsmobile Cutless Supreme. Sometimes a car tries to be fancy and sporty at the same time, but it ends up not being good at either. That is what happened with the 1967 Oldsmobile Cutless Supreme. It looked nice on the outside, but when you really looked closer, it had a lot of problems that made it one of the weaker muscle cars. To start with, it only came as a 4-door hardtop just 1 year earlier. It had a cool roof shape and a name that sounded rich. Under the hood, there was a big V8 engine with 320 horsepower and 330 cubic inches. Sounds strong, right? But driving it felt more like a regular family car than something fast and exciting. The outside had smooth lines and a tunnelback shape. But compared to other muscle cars like the GTO or Chevel, it just looked too simple. It was missing that wild, bold style that made real muscle cars stand out. Even the colors and shapes felt too grown up and not very fun. Now, let's look inside. The materials were nicer than cheaper cars, but the design was plain. Nothing popped. There were no wild stripes or bright colors like in other cars from that time. It just felt quiet and serious, not like a car that wanted to race down the road. And when it came to driving, the Cutless Supreme was too heavy and soft. The handling felt slow. The car did not turn or stop the way a muscle car should, even though it had different transmission choices, including a Jetaway 2-speed and a 4-speed manual. None of them made the car feel exciting. Number 14, 1969 Pontiac Executive 400. The 1969 Pontiac Executive 400 tried to mix power and luxury, but instead, it just gave people problems and no real fun. This car had a very long hood and a big body with shiny chrome all around. Inside, it had soft carpeting and wood grain panels to look fancy. But all that luxury made the car super heavy. Muscle cars are supposed to be fast and exciting, but this one was slow and felt more like a big, boring cruiser. Under the hood, the Executive had a 400 cubic inch V8 engine. That sounds powerful, but it wasn't fast compared to muscle cars like the GTO or Firebird. It made noise, but it couldn't race or burn rubber at stoplights. It was better at slow, quiet driving than muscle car speed. The inside was roomy, and the seats were soft, but the car felt too quiet and smooth. Other muscle cars make drivers feel excited, but the Executive just floated on the road without any thrill. It had power steering and power brakes, which made driving easy, but made the car feel even less sporty. Handling was a big problem. The Executive was huge and hard to turn quickly. It wasn't built for tight corners or sharp turns. Plus, it drank a lot of gasoline, which became a big problem soon after, because people wanted smaller, more fuel-friendly cars. Even with cool colors like Warwick Blue and Carousel Red, and options for 2-door or 4-door, the Pontiac Executive 400 couldn't hide how heavy, slow, and boring it was. Number 13, 1966 Dodge Charger. The 1966 Dodge Charger is way too big and super heavy. Trying to park it feels like trying to squeeze a whale into a tiny space. Driving on busy city streets is not fun at all. It does not turn easily, and that makes it hard to control. Then, there is the design. It had fancy spinning headlights, but that did not help it drive better. The fastback shape made the car lift off the ground when it went fast, which is very bad. In races like NASCAR, the Charger could not keep up. Even after they added a small spoiler, it still did not win much. That shows the design was more for looks than for speed. The Charger also used a lot of fuel. Because it was so big and heavy, it burned gas super fast. If you had to drive far, you would stop at the gas station a lot. Other cars back then used less fuel, so people who wanted to save money would skip the Charger. Inside, the Charger was not comfy. The front had bucket seats and a big console in the middle, which made the space feel tight. The back seats were tiny and not good for long trips. The dashboard was full of dials and gauges. It looked cool, but it was confusing to use. Even with its shiny looks, people did not buy it much. Dodge only sold about 37,000 Chargers in the first year. That is not a lot. Other cars, like the Ford Mustang, were smaller, cheaper, and way more popular. That just proves that the Charger's size and style could not make up for all its problems. Number 12, 1965 Buick Special Deluxe. The 1965 Buick Special Deluxe was mostly slow and boring instead. The outside looked okay, with a long hood and shiny chrome. Inside, the car had soft seats and a roomy space, but it didn't feel exciting like other muscle cars. It came in colors like Arctic white and seafoam green, but even cool paint couldn't hide the fact it was slow. Under the cover, the Special Deluxe had a 225 cubic inch V6 engine. That sounds good for saving gas, but it was weak for a muscle car. The car could go up to 100 miles per hour, but it took a long time to get there. Compared to the big V8 engines and true muscle cars, this car was just too slow. It had a 3-speed manual transmission, but it didn't make driving fun or fast. Even though the car had loud dual exhausts and glass pack mufflers to try and sound tough, it didn't help much. The engine was still slow and the car didn't feel powerful. Inside, Buick added some small comforts like a Deluxe steering wheel, seat belts, and rubber mats. These made it nicer to ride in but didn't add any excitement or speed. The trunk was strong and looked good, but that didn't matter when the car couldn't perform. With white wall tires and a champagne mist paint job, the Special Deluxe looked grown up, but was missing the muscle car spirit. It was slow, soft, and just plain ordinary for the muscle car world. Number 11, 1966 Chevrolet Biscane 250. The 1966 Chevrolet Biscane 250 was the lowest model Chevrolet made that year, even below the Bel Air and Impala. It had plain cloth bench seats, manual windows, manual steering, and 4-wheel drum brakes with no power assist. This made the car simple and easy to fix, but also very boring compared to other muscle cars that were fast and wild. Under the hood, it had a 250 cubic inch inline 6-cylinder engine. This engine made only 155 horsepower, which was far too weak for a muscle car. The torque was decent at 265 pound-feet, but the car still felt slow and could not race against the powerful V8 muscle cars of the time. The Biscane had a 3-speed manual transmission on the steering column. Some drivers liked this setup, but it did nothing to make the car faster or more exciting. Even after upgrades like an Offenhauser intake manifold, a bigger carburetor, and stronger valves and springs, the car still was not close to true muscle car performance. The big body and large rear cargo space made the Biscane great for hauling things, but terrible for quick, fun driving. It rode on basic wheels and showed lots of rust and wear. Despite its tough looks, it was heavy and slow, making it hard to enjoy as a muscle car. Inside, the car was simple, with rubber mats and no fancy features. The champagne mist paint and fawn interior looked nice from far away but felt plain and worn up close. The Biscane 250 proved that strong looks and simple power don't make a good muscle car. Number 10, 1965 Plymouth Barracuda. The 1965 Plymouth Barracuda missed the mark by a lot. It had a weird design, weak engines, and no real muscle car feeling. The design was strange. Plymouth took a regular Valiant and added a giant curved rear window. It wasn't a hatchback, so the trunk was awkward to use. The big window made the car look odd, not sporty like the Mustang or sharp like the Corvair. It just looked plain and kind of boring. The engines were not strong either. The base engine was a 6-cylinder with almost no power. The better choice was a 273 cubic inch V8 that made 180 horsepower, but that was still weak. The Mustang's engine had 271 horsepower and was way faster. The Barracuda took almost 13 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour. That's very slow for a muscle car. Driving the Barracuda was no fun. The suspension made the ride bumpy, the steering was loose, and the brakes were not great. Even with a V8, the car didn't sound exciting. The Mustang, or even the Corvair Spider with its turbo engine, was better for driving fun. In its first full year, the Barracuda sold only about 65,000 cars. The Mustang sold over 400,000. That shows people didn't like this odd-looking car with a glass roof. Number 9, 1966, AMC Ramler Marlin. The roof looked too long, the back looked too heavy, and the whole thing just looked off. That is the 1966 AMC Ramler Marlin. AMC had a smaller idea at first called the Tarpon, but then they made it bigger. Bad idea. The roof stretched way too far back and the car looked huge and strange. From the front, it was kind of okay, but from the side or back, it looked weird and bulky. Driving the Marlin was not fun either. It was big and heavy, but the wheels were close together, so it wobbled a lot. If you tried turning fast, it leaned hard, like a boat in the wind. That is not what you want in a muscle car. It felt scary to drive, not exciting. Under the hood, it had a 327 cubic inch V8 engine with 270 horsepower. That might sound strong, but the car was too heavy to go fast. Other muscle cars left it far behind. It was slow in drag races and not very thrilling. Inside, it tried to feel fancy, but it ended up boring. The dashboard looked plain, the seats were not very soft, and the back was cramped because of the low roof. It was not sporty, and it was not comfy either, and people did not like it. AMC sold only 10,327 cars that year. The next year, they sold just 2,545. After that, they gave up. The Marlin failed hard in every way a muscle car can. Number 8, 1965, Dodge Dart GT Convertible. The 1965 Dodge Dart GT Convertible has a lot of car worseness. The car looks old and not in a good way. It does not have that shiny, cool look people like. Next, the steering is bad. It feels super loose. Turning the wheel does not do much. That makes it hard to drive straight or turn safely. Newer cars have tight steering that feels good. This one just feels wobbly and slow. The brakes are also a big problem. Even though some brake parts were replaced, nobody knows if they work well. That is scary. If a car cannot stop fast, it is not safe to drive. New cars stop quickly and safely, but this one might not. Inside the car, things are not much better. The seats are new, but still not comfy. The dashboard is plain and boring. The steering wheel has a weird wrap on it that looks cheap. Some parts, like the oil gauge, were added later, but they did not help make the car feel special. The power is also weak. It is a convertible, so it should feel fun and fast. But it does not. The engine feels old and tired. It does not zoom like a cool car from the 1960s should. And the wheels? They are just 14-inch steel wheels, with skinny white wall tires. They do not grip the road well, and they do not look cool either. Driving in the rain or on slick roads could be tricky. Number 7, 1964, Mercury Cyclone. The 1964 Mercury Cyclone sounded like it should be fast. The name even sounds exciting, but the car was not exciting at all. It had a 289 cubic inch V8 engine, which made only 271 horsepower. That might seem like a lot, but it was not enough to keep up with real muscle cars back then. The engine came with a 4-speed manual transmission that was supposed to help with speed, but shifting gears was tricky, rough, and not fun. It made the car feel more like work than play. The size of the car also caused problems. It was built on a small frame, which made it feel tight inside. There was not much room to stretch out, and the ride was super bumpy. If you hit a pothole, you felt it hard. The tiny tires and skinny shape made the car wobble during turns. It felt more like riding in a shopping cart than driving a tough car. The design looked odd, too. It had a fake sporty hood scoop that did not help the engine at all. Mercury added shiny chrome parts just to make it look fast, but they only added more weight. The racing badges on the side made big promises the car could not keep. Inside, the white seats looked fancy but got dirty very fast. The dash had boring gauges and the radio could barely find a good station. Even the special tachometer did not help the car go faster. And the worst part, it burned too much gas and gave nothing exciting in return. For a muscle car, that is just embarrassing. Number 6, 1969 Ford Torino Talladega. The 1969 Ford Torino Talladega, if you actually drove it on a regular street, felt more like a mistake. Ford built it to race in NASCAR, but then had to sell it to normal people. That is when the problems showed up. First, let's talk about the engine. The race cars got a special Boss 429 V8 engine. That thing was a monster. But the street version, it got a 428 Cobra Jet V8 with only 335 horsepower. That sounds strong. But Ford stuck it with a boring column-shift automatic transmission. No manual option, no fun shifting. Just a slow-feeling drive in a car that looked way too fast for its own good. The front of the car was shaped for speed, but it ended up looking weird. Ford used a rear bumper as the front bumper. Yes, really. And the car sat low, which made bumps and potholes feel even worse. Riding in it was rough. It was like the car was always mad at the road. Inside, things were even more disappointing. There was nothing fancy, just a flat bench seat and a plain dashboard. It did not feel fast, strong, or special. It just felt boring. You would expect something exciting inside a race-style car, but nope. Even though it could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.5 seconds, it was still slower than its race version. And it only went around 130 miles per hour. Not even close to the race car's 190. Only about 750 were made. Not because people loved it, but because Ford just needed enough to race. Number 5, 1969, Ford Mercury Cyclone. Spoiler 2. Imagine a car that tries to look super fast, but drives like a sleepy turtle. That is the 1969 Mercury Cyclone Spoiler 2. It had a long front end, stretched about 6 inches, to look good for NASCAR racing. But when regular people got to drive it, they found out it was not fast at all. Mercury gave it a 351 cubic inch Windsor 5.8 engine. That sounds exciting, but it only made 290 horsepower. Even worse, it came with an automatic transmission and a boring bench seat. That does not scream race car, it screams slow couch. To make things even weirder, Mercury painted the car in 2 loud styles. One was called Presidential Blue for Dan Gurney. The other was Candy Apple Red for Cale Yarbrough. Sure, the car looked cool, but that was all it had going for it. Only about 300 to 500 of these cars were ever made. Not because they were special, because no one really wanted one. It was supposed to be a race car for the street, but it felt like a pretend version. Fast looks, slow heart. That is what made this car one of the worst muscle car mess-ups ever. Number 4, 1966, Chevel SS 396. The 1966 Chevrolet Chevel SS 396. On the outside, looked strong and mean. like it was ready to race. But the inside? It felt more like a fancy hotel lobby. Chevrolet filled this muscle car with luxury features that just did not belong. It had 4-way power seats, cruise control, and, believe it or not, a built-in tissue dispenser. Who needs tissues in a car built for speed? It was like putting a flower vase on a rocket. The engine sounded like a winner at first. It had a 396 cubic inch V8 engine, and you could pick from 3 versions. One made 325 horsepower, another made 360 horsepower, and the strongest version made 375 horsepower. The fastest one could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.4 seconds and hit 118 miles per hour at top speed. But no matter how fast it was, the car still felt confused. It was trying to be 2 things at once: a fast muscle car and a smooth luxury car. Instead of doing one job well, it did both halfway. Muscle car fans wanted speed and power, not soft seats and tissues. Luxury fans wanted quiet rides, not loud engines and racing stripes. Number 3, 1966 Dodge Monaco. If you like cars that shine and look cool, this one is not it. The 1966 Dodge Monaco has paint that chips way too easily. The colors fade fast, so the car ends up looking really old and beat up. Even if you try to take care of it, the outside still looks like it went through 10 years of bad weather. That is some major car worseness right there. Now, let's talk about the inside. The interior paint is a big problem. To make it match, you need weird special compounds. If you do not have those, the colors will all look wrong. Parts of the inside can look patchy, like someone painted them with a broken crayon. On top of that, the seats and trims lose their nice feel over time. They stop being soft or comfy and just feel worn out and old. This car also came in different shapes, such as a 2-door hardtop or a 4-door sedan, but none of them really looked exciting. The 4-door version is super big and hard to drive. It feels like trying to park a boat. Even though Dodge tried to make it seem sporty, it never actually felt like a fun or fast car. Driving the Monaco is not great either. It is heavy and bulky. Turning it is a struggle, and going around corners feels like wrestling with a giant rolling box. It does not zoom, it does not glide. It just lumbers along the road like a sleepy elephant. That is car worseness, from bumper to bumper. Number 2, 1963 Ford Galaxy Lightweight. The Ford Galaxy Lightweight was built only to race in a straight line, and everything else, comfort, looks, safety, was thrown in the trash. The engine was huge, a 427 cubic inch V8 with 2 big carburetors. It made 425 horsepower. That sounds exciting until you see how Ford built the rest of the car. They removed almost everything to make it light. The fenders, hood, and trunk lid were not steel. They were fiberglass. The bumpers were thin aluminum and would bend if you looked at them too hard. Speaking of interior design, it was even worse. No radio, no clock, no carpet, no insulation, no backup lights, no roof support. Even the armrests were gone. You sat on cheap bucket seats, and the floor was just covered in plain rubber. It felt more like a race car that someone had forgotten to finish. The car had a T10 4-speed transmission and a 4.11 rear axle ratio. That means it could blast off down a drag strip, but on regular roads, it was useless. It had no power steering and rode like a wagon full of bricks. Ford made only 200 of these cars, and that is probably a good thing. It was loud, uncomfortable, and empty. Number 1, 1967 AMC Rebel SST. The 1967 AMC Rebel SST is one of those cars that had a superpower. Yes, right. But the rest of the car felt like it was just thrown together with leftover parts. The engine was a 343 cubic inch V8, making 235 brake horsepower. That sounds decent, but it was not enough to beat the big names like Chevrolet or Ford. And while it had a 4-speed manual transmission, it still felt slow and clunky. The Borg Warner manual with a Hurst shifter sounded fancy, but it did not save the car from feeling awkward to drive. The Rebel SST came with power steering and power drum brakes. Well, that is a joke for a car pretending to be sporty. It could not stop fast, and it sure did not handle well. It was heavy and felt like it wanted to tip over on tight turns. The tires were 225 by 70 by 14 inches. They were mounted on shiny Magnum 500 wheels. They looked cool, but they did not make the car go any faster. It still felt stiff and bouncy on normal roads. The design also tried too hard. The roofline had a smooth slope, and the car was painted frost white in 1982. But the looks could not cover up the fact that this car was outdated even when it was new. The black vinyl seats and soundproofing helped a little, but the ride was still loud and rough. Only 1,686 Rebel SSTs were made. That is not because they were special. It is because nobody wanted one. AMC was late to the muscle car game. By the time they made this car, other companies were already way ahead. The Rebel SST could not keep up, and AMC quickly moved on to better cars like the Javelin. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed watching these classic worst American cars, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more car history and reviews.